And so the story, like a dream, when you wake up from a dream, you know the dream was a dream, but it was still of you. The characters were of you, even if they were
Yeah.
scary or unfamiliar. They were of your substance. And so in that, it's very interesting. And we as human beings love stories. We communicate by stories. We pass on our teachings by stories. So stories are deeply valuable to us. And until we are willing to disengage, briefly at least, from the story, we are actually tyrannized by the stories. And that's the problem. And that's the shift. If we can recognize the story as just this, as a novel. I love reading a good novel or going to a good movie. I love it, and I get totally identified with the characters, and I learn deeply from that. And then the novel's over. Maybe I read it again, or movie's over. And I still am I, but enriched by the story, not tyrannized by the story.
That's a good distinction. So, I was reading about your meeting, first time you meet Papaji, and you said that shortly after that your mind stopped, and that was a breakthrough. And I think he said to you, first thing he said to you was, you've come for the right place to find freedom, to find truth. Then he said to you, do nothing, and you didn't understand that to start with.
Yes.
Can you just talk me through that process?
Well, I was so thrilled to see him. So that was really the context, because I really did recognize this is the one I've been praying for without knowing it would be an Indian man, a guru. In fact, that was sort of the opposite of what I thought it would be. I didn't expect to find myself in this place, and yet it was so perfect and it was so true that I really listened to him very carefully. I knew I was in the right place. And so immediately on meeting him, I got a yes within myself. This is correct. And so I wasn't spending my time doubting him, checking him out, which is natural to do with teachers, and I advise it. But that happened very quickly for me. And so I was paying very close attention. And he said, just stop, just do nothing. And I thought I understood what that meant, but I interpreted it the way I understood stop, do nothing. So I was very still. Do nothing, but that was actually doing something. I was actually holding myself in a rigid way, and I was stopping, and he was saying, no, deeper, no, really stop. And I finally let this sink in. It was a profound relaxation. It was an opening. In that way, stop means to open. Just open. Don't reach for anything, don't reject anything. Just let your mind open. And I don't know when that had happened. All my life I'd either been rejecting and running from things, or reaching for things, grasping, running toward things. And there was just this spaciousness and light and clarity and stillness. There was no thought. I didn't know that was possible. I would have argued that it was impossible, because when I would think back, all I could see were thoughts. But there are actually many moments in every person's life where there's no thought. Only our whole culture references our lives by thought, so we link up thought to thought to thought. In that moment, he basically said, stop thinking. But he didn't say, stop thinking. It was like, stop thinking. It was an invitation, and it was so easy. It was so natural. And it was deep rest, and from that then I could recognize I am. And there's no story of me. In that moment, maybe I didn't even know my name or where I was. It just life. I am. Consciousness. And it cuts something. It cuts a referencing to who I am by whatever story is appearing in me, in being. So it was a huge moment. It wasn't the final moment for me of really realizing, but it was a moment of the dialogue stopping, so that I actually could turn my attention to deeper discovery, rather than just this loop of discussion. What am I doing right? What am I doing wrong? Am I getting it? Is this stopping? That just was non-existent.
So what does that mean, turning the attention to deeper discovery? On a practical level, what did that mean for you?
Well, what it meant for me was actually there was a huge fear there. If I didn't have this story, there was
like a void.
First, there was this moment of
yeah.
exquisite grace, and then there was this, oh, and the thought arose, what now? What to do now? But if I didn't follow that thought, which is what he was advising, if it arises, just don't follow it. Let it sink back down to where it came from. And you could just see the thought just dissolve back into consciousness. And so I could investigate, then open, sort of like what we were speaking about earlier, when I had the nervous attacks as a child and my body disappeared. I could just investigate this as energy without evaluating it or judging it. And then it was just the same light, same consciousness. And this went on for this whole meeting with him, but then I would go back to my little hotel room, or Eli and I would go have lunch or something, and my mind would kick back in, and I would start the same loop of, am I getting it? Is this it? Did I do it right? Am I enlightened yet? But then I would get back in his presence, and he would just say, stop. And he was emanating that, too. So it would be this grace of peace and fulfillment with nothing being done. And then there was just a moment where that was recognized. That's always here, actually. That I felt he gave it to me, but that's not actually the truth, because he was so established in that it was the emanation from his being. And so there was permission for me just to stop telling my story, stop defining myself. And in that, I could just be myself.
It takes a lot of courage, though, to stop telling your story.
I was ready for it, I really had felt... I had told so many different versions of my story, and I had created my reality, and I had attracted prosperity, and I had visualized happiness, and I had a very good life, I had to say. But there was still something fundamental that was dissatisfied. And so I really prayed for a teacher, and a true teacher, a final teacher. And I had had enough failures and enough successes to know that it wasn't in what I did, or at least I didn't know what to do. So I was ready to pay attention, and maybe for me the courage was just going to him. Just knocking on his door. After that, I couldn't say it was courage, Ian, really. It was actually easeful. So who knows what steps we have to take, or hurdles we have to leap to get to a certain point, and then it's surrender. And there may be things that come up. I mean, some of my Christian conditioning came up, and, some just nervous agitation came up, but it was just part of what was coming up. It didn't have to be judged. I believe the courage factor is there only when we're really judging that this could lead to something horrible, or this could overtake me, or, oh my God, this shouldn't be happening. If we aren't having that dialogue, it's very natural just to experience what's here, and to, in that, experience what's deeper. So I didn't feel courageous, I have to say.
Okay.